Tristan Taormino, Opening Up. A Guide to Creating and Sustaining Open Relationships. Narrated by Amanda Marr and Santino Palma.
Do you feel restless in your relationship, like something's missing that you can't quite put your finger on? Or are you trapped in a pattern of cheating on your partners? If so, you may not be suited to a monogamous relationship. As we grow up, we're taught that we'll meet our soulmates and live happily ever after. But this fairy tale simply doesn't match up with reality. As divorce rates show, monogamous relationships are hard to sustain. The truth is, no one person can fulfill all our needs and desires, and expecting so much from one relationship can cause it to buckle under the pressure. Opening our relationships gives us space to explore our desires, and most importantly of all, it forces us to confront our own insecurities and build relationships based on trust instead of fear and possessiveness.
Blink 1 of 8.
Most of us grow up believing a very compelling fairy tale that we'll grow up to meet the one, get married, and then live happily ever after. We've been taught that our soulmate should be all things to us. This magical person will be able to support us, share our political enthusiasms and interests, be the perfect co-parent to our children, and even be our best friend. No wonder so many marriages end in divorce these days. That's a huge amount of pressure to put on just one person.
The key message here is, it's a myth that one person can fulfill all our needs and desires.
One of the most damaging myths about monogamous relationships is the idea that once we find a life partner, we'll never so much as desire anybody else, because this partner will fulfill all of our sexual needs. This belief is damaging because it completely ignores how human sexuality works. Of course we don't stop being attracted to other people after we get married. And of course, one person can't always fulfill all our desires. After all, our sexual tastes can change. Maybe in our 60s, we'll develop an interest in being spanked. Or maybe a bout of depression will kill our sex drive for a while. In traditional monogamous relationships, people start feeling guilty when they are attracted to other people. This means that they either bottle up those feelings or they resort to cheating. Cheating is common. A poll conducted in 2007 reported that half of the 70,000 respondents admitted to being unfaithful in their relationships. And cheating is as effective a way to sabotage a relationship as ceasing to share your true feelings. Luckily, there is another option. You can be honest with yourself and your partner and accept that, in fact, one person can't fulfill your every need. You will be attracted to other people, and sometimes you'll feel dissatisfied in your relationship. Once you've accepted that, you have options. You can actively choose monogamy and embrace your relationship with realistic expectations, or you can have a conversation with your partner about opening up your relationship to other people. Either way, having realistic expectations will be hugely beneficial for your relationship. Instead of believing in a fairy tale, you can appreciate what you have. And even better, you can start actively building the kind of relationship that suits you.
Blink 2 of 8.
Imagine your partner reveals to you that he has a foot fetish and all he wants to do is nibble on your toes. But the very idea creeps you out. You think feet are gross and don't want to participate. What do? One approach that non-monogamous couples take when their levels of sexual desire don't match is to open their relationships up to casual sex with other people. That way, your partner can find someone who shares his fetish and can enjoy some no-strings-attached sex that doesn't involve you. Couples can also explore casual sex together, for example, by visiting swingers clubs and being intimate with another person or couple. Or they can hook up with people they meet online.
Here's the key message. Non-monogamous relationships come in many forms.
While there may be an emotional dimension to these sexual experiences, they're usually not intended to grow into more serious relationships. Polyamorous relationships, however, are different. To be polyamorous means to love more than one person. People in these kinds of relationships have multiple loving, committed partnerships that extend beyond casual sex. Polyamorous relationships may be constructed in various ways. For example, a couple may designate their own relationship as primary and engage in secondary relationships on the side. Other people may not want to label and categorize their relationships in that way. Instead, they may prefer to have non-hierarchical relationships with multiple people. Some polyamorous practice polyfidelity, in which they form a multi-partner group. One of the most famous examples of this was the Carista Commune, a community in San Francisco that existed from 1971 to 1991. At its height, it had 30 members, with each woman in a romantic and sexual relationship with each man in the group. The most common polyamorous structures are triads or quads, relationships among 3 or 4 people. Sometimes these relationships are closed, meaning that the people inside the group aren't allowed to have sex with anyone from outside. Others make space for members to hook up with whomever they want. The form of non-monogamy you choose depends entirely on you. Do you crave casual flings? Are you comfortable with your partner having emotional relationships with other people? Do you want to live with multiple partners, or would you prefer to live by yourself? Answering these questions will take some thought and reflection. And as we'll find out in the next blink, if your relationship is to work, it will require self-awareness and very good communication skills.
Blink 3 of 8.
Some people think of non-monogamy as a free-for-all of endless sex, swinging, and parties. They might be disappointed to know that, more often, it involves endless conversations about boundaries, consent, and who's going to take the kids to school. As we've heard, there's no cookie-cutter template for non-monogamous relationships. That can be incredibly freeing. But it also means that you need to learn how to communicate very well, or the whole thing will fall apart. If you've been in a previously monogamous couple, you'll need to have an honest conversation before you can even consider opening up your relationship, and figure out exactly what the ground rules are.
The key message here is, non-monogamy only works if you have incredibly good communication skills.
As part of a non-monogamous couple, will you be allowed to have casual sex only or full-fledged relationships? Are your lovers allowed to visit your home or meet your friends, or do they need to be kept separate from the rest of your life? These conversations can be challenging, but they'll be essential to the new form of your relationship. At every development in your relationship, you'll need to check in again to see how your partners are faring and renegotiate the ground rules if necessary. If all this talking sounds like a lot of work, it might mean that a non-monogamous relationship isn't for you. Remember, you'll need to repeat this process with every partner in your life. The good news is that this level of open communication can lead to very strong relationships. It might not sound sexy to have a monthly meeting to discuss how everyone in the household will divide the chores, or to have a Google Calendar to schedule time together. But this kind of clear communication creates high levels of trust and stability, which are the key ingredients for fun and freedom in relationships. A big misconception about non-monogamy is that polyamorous relationships are less committed than monogamous ones. This may be because there are fewer legal means for demonstrating commitment, as you can only marry one person at a time. But that doesn't mean that poly relationships are less serious or committed. On the contrary, they take huge amounts of work and dedication. And they require everyone involved to develop the self-awareness and communication skills necessary to weather the sometimes turbulent emotional terrain of multi-partner relationships.
Blink 4 of 8.
Designing strong non-monogamous relationships involves making very clear agreements with all of your partners. These agreements center on what kinds of relationships are permitted, how much time everyone can spend with different partners, and what kinds of safe sex practices are allowed within and outside the couple or group. It's no exaggeration to say that these agreements are sacred. Everyone involved puts a lot of time and effort into agreeing on boundaries. People also make themselves vulnerable when they articulate clearly what they want and need. That's why violation of these agreements can feel like as much of a betrayal as cheating in monogamous relationships.
Here's the key message. Agreements are sacred in non-monogamous relationships.
Imagine you have a rule that you and your husband can only have sex with strangers, but then he hooks up with your best friend. Or you find out that one of your triad has had unprotected sex with someone else and put all of you at risk of disease. These kinds of infractions will seriously undermine the trust in your relationships and can take time and energy to heal. You'll need to work out why your partner broke a promise and whether this partner can be trusted in the future. Not all agreement breaking is intentional. Sometimes there's a genuine misunderstanding. For example, people can have different definitions of what constitutes a date. You may feel that taking a lover out to lunch isn't romantic, while your partner might disagree. That's why it's important to be as specific as possible about what's permitted in your relationships. Sometimes agreements can be broken because one person in the relationship gets swept up by strong, unexpected feelings that he can't control. For example, your partner could realize that he's fallen in love with the person with whom he was having supposedly casual sex. Suddenly, the relationship dynamics have shifted and need to be reevaluated. Or you might realize that while you thought you were straight, you've developed intense same-sex attractions and need to renegotiate the agreements in your existing relationship to accommodate that. It's not always possible to predict how you'll feel. Opening up your relationship can make it much more dynamic. But if you keep talking about your agreements in a respectful way, you can learn how to navigate changes together.
Blink 5 of 8.
Imagine you're on the couch in an old t-shirt after a hard day of work. You're exhausted and craving some cuddles with your partner. And then in she saunters, dressed to the nines, with a sparkle in her eye. She's going out on a date with a new love interest. You immediately feel left out, and jealousy rears its ugly head. Jealousy comes up in all relationships. In fact, in monogamous relationships, we're taught that we should be jealous if our partner so much as flirt with anyone else. It's a way of showing we care. That mindset doesn't simply vanish when we embark on non-monogamous relationships.
The key message here is, to thrive in non-monogamous relationships, you must learn how to deal with jealousy.
As much as you might be fine intellectually with the idea of your partner making out with someone else, chances are the reality of an open or poly relationship will trigger very intense feelings. You may start to envy the number of sexual partners your partner has, or you may envy the intensity of your partner's other relationships. At the heart of these envious feelings lies a deep sense of insecurity. If you doubt your own value or the strength of your relationship, then it's much easier to feel like someone else is threatening it. This insecurity can fuel a fierce sense of possessiveness. If you're afraid of losing your partner, it's a natural response to try to cling on as tightly as possible. These feelings can be very uncomfortable, but if you learn how to cope with them, they can actually improve your self-confidence and the strength of your relationship. Most importantly, you need to allow yourself to feel whatever you're feeling. Jealousy isn't rational, but it is real. Instead of beating yourself up, just acknowledge the emotion and try to understand it better. Are you feeling left out? Or are you feeling undervalued by your partner? Try to understand your own triggers. The next step is to seek support from good friends or therapists. They can help you get some perspective on the situation and provide much-needed comfort. When you've weathered the worst, you can start thinking about whether there's a specific action you need to take. Do you need to practice self-care or have a conversation with your partner? Jealousy is an important messenger that points us toward our own needs and boundaries.
Blink 6 of 8.
Let's do another thought experiment. You're at home on the couch again in your ratty old t-shirt. Your partner is out on a date, which would usually drive you wild with jealousy. But this time, as you think of him dancing and making out with his hot date, something else happens. The thought of them together actually turns you on and makes you feel elated. This sensation of vicarious joy and excitement for your partner is called compersion. Instead of viewing his relationships with others as depriving you of something, you start to see them as adding to your life because they make your partner happy and excited.
The key message of this blink is, compersion is the best part of non-monogamous relationships.
Some people experience erotic compersion when they find themselves aroused by watching their partners having sex with someone else, perhaps during group sex or at a swingers club. Then again, some people don't even have to be physically present. Just the thought of a partner being with someone else turns them on. But compersion can go even deeper than that. The fact that your partner's life is being made more exciting by someone else can make you feel grateful too. In our individualistic, competitive society, this kind of thinking doesn't come naturally. We're much more likely to fear what we have to lose instead of celebrating our gains. But luckily, compersion can be learned. Once you've confronted all your learned behaviors, like jealousy, fear, and competitiveness, you'll be able to create the space to practice different ways of thinking about your relationship. While jealousy is based on fear, compersion is based on love. Mastering it can make you feel powerful and fearless. Many couples report that opening their relationships up to other people has had the effect of improving their primary relationship. Suddenly, they're more conscious of each other. They make an effort to communicate and spend time with each other. And they infuse their relationships with the renewed excitement and self-confidence they've gained from being a part of the dating scene again. At its core, compersion arises from a deep sense of generosity. You're giving your partner the gift of space to explore his desires and fantasies, and showing that you trust him enough to come back to you without being held tight.
Blink 7 of 8.
Coming out to friends and family can be one of the hardest parts of being in a non-monogamous relationship. While society has started to accept lesbian and gay relationships, there's still an expectation that these will mirror conventional monogamous structures as much as possible. People are often threatened by the seeming ambiguity of multi-partner relationships, and they may have few references for open or polyamorous relationships besides what they see on TV about sister wives and polygamy. What's more, non-monogamy can challenge their own monogamous ideals, which can be reinforced by deep-seated moral and religious values.
Here's the key message. People in non-monogamous relationships face a lot of discrimination.
The very real threat of intolerance and discrimination can be a powerful deterrent to coming out as non-monogamous. If a judge decides that your relationships are somehow deviant, that could affect your custody arrangements for your children. If you're outed in a conservative workplace, you could lose your job. Many people in open or polyamorous relationships choose to keep them private for these very reasons. But there are costs to staying hidden as well. Keeping quiet about important relationships may distance you from your family and friends and make your partners invisible to the rest of the world. And sneaking around may affect your sense of self. If you're not ashamed of what you're doing, you may wonder, then why are you hiding it? Ultimately, you need to weigh the potential risks and make a personal decision about whether it's worth it to you to come out to a wider community. If you do decide to tell other people, then it's worth taking some time to work out a strategy. Whom would you like to tell? And who needs to know first? You may start with the professionals with whom your family interacts at school or the doctor's office. Or you may want to begin with the people you're closest to, like your best friend or sister. Be prepared to answer difficult questions and to be met with some concern or even hostility. Depending on whom you're telling, you may choose to inform people in a letter first, so that they can absorb the information before you have a discussion. And make sure you have support around you in the form of people who completely accept you and your life. It'll help you get through the more difficult conversations.
Blink 8 of 8.
A common concern that people have about non-monogamy is that it will destroy the family unit, which today is thought of as being a nuclear structure consisting of two heterosexual parents and their children. But this concept of family is quite recent. It used to be much more common for several generations of a family to live together under one roof, sharing domestic tasks. Over the last century, this has changed, and there's now much more pressure on parents to hold everything together without much support from other family members.
The key message here is, polyamorous relationships can transform our family structures.
Polyamorous relationships can provide a way to broaden familial networks again. These networks can revolve around a shared interest, like kinky sex or queer activism, or consist of a tribe of lovers and their families who support each other in emotional and practical ways, just like an ideal version of an extended biological family would. Many people are horrified at the idea of children growing up in these multi-partner families. Won't they be confused about who their parents are? But if you think about it, today's children are already used to blended families. With so many marriages ending in divorce, it's become commonplace for children to have bonus moms and dads. So why does it matter if they all happen to be in a relationship with each other? Having extra income and help around the house can lessen the burden on everybody and make for a happy, secure home life. Unfortunately, while children tend to be open-minded and accepting of different family structures, the adults around them often aren't. That means that your child may experience awkward questions and discriminatory remarks outside the house. As parents, you invariably communicate with institutions like schools, religious organizations, sports clubs, and so on. You'll need to give some careful thought to how much you want to disclose to them about your relationships. Do you live in a conservative town? Are there likely to be repercussions for your children? These are all questions to consider before coming out, even to your children. Depending on the circumstances, you may choose to withhold the details of your relationships from them. If you do choose to talk to them about having multiple partners, you should make sure to give them clear guidance about whom they're allowed to tell, and also prepare them for intolerant and discriminatory people they may encounter.
You've just listened to our blinks to Opening Up by Tristan Taormino.
The key message in these blinks is that we've all grown up with the myth that monogamous relationships are natural, but nothing could be farther from the truth. The high divorce rate and pandemic of cheating show that monogamous relationships are under great strain, as people put too much pressure on their one soulmate to fulfill all their needs and desires. Practicing non-monogamy teaches people to develop self-awareness and communication skills, and gives them the chance to freely explore aspects of their sexuality that they may have been keeping under cover. Here's one more piece of actionable advice. Get your legal affairs in order to protect your family. Unfortunately, our state institutions aren't designed to support alternative families. In fact, the law is often used to discriminate against them in custody and employment disputes. Make sure to protect your family with both a will and a living will in case something happens to you. That way, you can be sure that your partners will be able to make medical decisions regarding your care and inherit your estate.
Got feedback? We'd love to hear what you think about our content. Just drop an email to remember@blinkist.com with Opening Up as the subject line and share your thoughts.